What happens when communities are divided? Institutions are challenged, trust is declining, and leaders are expected to provide direction during uncertain times. Hmm. We are living in a period marked by cultural tension, economic uncertainty, shifting values, technological disruption, political polarization, and growing public distrust. The question is not whether cultural crisis exists. The question is what type of leaders are being developed to navigate them. Good morning and welcome to Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Delivers Results AM Talk Show. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, and today we're discussing one of the most important leadership conversations of our time: developing effective leaders during periods of cultural crisis. Today's episode is titled Leading Through Cultural Crisis: Developing Effective Leaders in the Era of Division, Uncertainty, and Rapid Change. Agenda 2030 in Action. Throughout history, every generation has faced defining moments that tested leadership, moments that tested character, moments that tested institutions, moments that tested communities, and moments that tested public trust. Today's leaders are navigating economic instability, they're navigating workforce disruption, they're navigating mental health challenges, they're navigating social division, they're navigating educational inequities, they're navigating misinformation, and they're navigating community distrust. Agenda 2030 provides a framework for addressing these challenges through SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 10, reduce inequalities, SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. Because sustainable development requires something often overlooked: effective leadership. Let's begin by understanding what a cultural crisis actually is. A cultural crisis occurs when communities experience uncertainty around values, identity, trust, social norms, institutional confidence. Cultural crises often emerge when change happens faster than people's ability to adapt. And boy, are we currently in cultural crisis across the US. A community experienced rapid demographic, economic, and technological changes over a decade. Residents felt disconnected, institutions struggled to keep pace, misinformation spread quickly, trust declined, and the issue wasn't simply policy, the issue was leadership. During cultural crises, people search for stability, direction, and trust. And this is where leadership becomes essential. Let me pause for a second. Being a leader is difficult. Leading others is difficult. Trying to have balance as a leader between doing right, leading others, and not and ensuring that trust, stability, and direction is there is difficult. Leading is more than just a title. It is action, it is behavior, it is mindset, and it evolves from the individual, him or herself. Things along the way persuade people's leadership style, leadership's belief, leadership's actions, leaders' mindset that would cause a cultural crisis even before rolling out in the community. And so honing on the cultural crisis within before handling a cultural crisis externally is absolutely where it begins. And even if a person feels like they have their I's dotted and T's crossed, it's always going to be a scenario, a person, or an event that shakes up who a person is and what they believe. So the internal cultural crisis that one identity crisis that one a person deals with helps them to be stronger as a leader on the external or not. And so that leadership that becomes essential is not just leading individuals in an organization, but first learning to lead yourself. Okay, off the soapbox. But not all leadership is effective during periods of crisis. Many leadership approaches were designed for stability, not disruption. And traditional leadership often focuses on maintaining systems, preserving routines, and protecting ex- exiting structures. But cultural crisis requires leaders who can adapt, leaders who can listen, leaders who communicate clearly, leaders that build trust, leaders that navigate complexity, and leaders that are not caught up in good old girl, good old boy, or homegirl norms. Leaders cannot be a part of a crowd, or I should say, leaders should not be part of a crowd. Leaders should be neutral in what they do, how they act, and ensuring that the organization or entity that they've been elected or volunteered to lead, they're keeping that in a forefront, not keeping truth to loyalty in relationships. That's not leadership, that's management, and that's disastrous. But let me share. An organization faced a significant workforce challenge recently. And in today's climate, that's a lot of organizations that are facing workforce changes. Their leadership initially an old led relied on an old communications method, and employees felt unheard. That's not dinosaurs times. That's currently what's happened here in this year, right? 25, 22, 24, 26, going into 30. As a result, morale declined, productivity suffered, and only when leadership shifted towards transparency and engagement did trust begin to recover. And organizations are not just workforce in the sense of economic mobility, it can be volunteer organizations. When those trusted to lead and an organization has a old method of communication and only appease to those that are within their good old boy, good old girl, whatever network, then you're isolating others within an organization. And not just that, if the person at the helm or the people at the helm want to enforce rules but don't follow rules, that's piss poor leadership. And that's going to have a breakdown in communication, people feeling heard, morale is going to decline, people are going to transfer, people are going to leave, right? And that falls on leadership, the person at the top. That's going to fall on the people responsible to support the leader and not catching things like that. People want individuals that they not only can trust, but they can follow. So when we're thinking about leadership crisis, leadership that ignores change eventually becomes ineffective. And it happens not just in work organizations, but volunteer organizations. And leaders need to be mindful of that. Or the quicker they come in, the quicker they'll leave, right? And one of the greatest casualties of cultural crisis is trust. You'll find some people today that will say trust is earned, not given, while others will give the trust and then quickly it fades because of actions, words, behaviors, or lack of the above. Trust is the foundation of leadership. And let's be real. Leaders that are effective will not be popular but at all. You will always have people that support, people that are on the fence, people that feel like they can do it better, and then people that just don't support what you do, how you do it, why you do it, what you doing, how you doing, whatever. And guess what? That is okay because that is a role of a leader, and that is the acceptance, the accountability, and responsibility of an effective leader. It is okay. But even if someone doesn't agree with how you lead or why you did something, you want to try to maintain that trust, because when trust goes, everything else outside of that goes as well. Because without trust, communities disengage. Without trust, employees disconnect. Without trust, volunteers leave. Without trust, stakeholders withdraw. And without trust, partnerships weaken. And these are never good signs. Too many institutions in today's climate face trust challenges. Why? Because people are simply looking for authenticity. People are looking for consistency, not what you say, but how you're doing it. Not what you said to another, but showing them, right? People are looking for accountability. Listen, that's me. I made a mistake. Yep, that was the decision. Even though people underneath me made the mistake, I stand on it, right? And people are looking for transparency. Again, you're always going to have good, bad, or indifferent, but people are always looking for the leaders to lead, so on and so forth. So people are looking for that authenticity, consistency, accountability, and transparency. Recently a community leader began hosting regular listening sessions, which is always a great thing, right? But instead of speaking at public meetings, residents felt heard and they were included, buy-in, relationships improved, because now instead of you being the authority, now you're being a follower. You're sitting and you're putting yourself in their shoes. And people want that. People want to hear you, but they want to know that you can listen and be an active listener. And as a result, trust grew because residents were heard and relationships improved. People may not always agree with leaders, and you will never have 100% of people agreeing with you. That's to be expected. But they must believe that leaders are listening, not just for the sake of a vote, not for the sake of a political season, not for the sake of money, but genuinely hearing what they have to say. And trust grows when leaders learn how to navigate differences effectively because we are really living in a melting pot, not just based off culture, but based off people mindset, bias, prejudice, ethics, morals, and all of the above. No two people are alike, even identical twins, right? And one of the greatest challenges, greatest leadership challenges today is managing disagreements, right? Effective leaders understand disagreement is inevitable, division is not. Leaders during cultural crisis requires respectful dialogue. Agree to disagree, but do it respectfully. Emotional intelligence. And sitting watching a show called Find Love or Pop the Balloon, I thought was the most unique show that I learned, I think, earlier this year. And listening to men, it's a dating reality show, right? But one of the things that I often hear echo outside of do you believe in God is emotional intelligence. And I have to sit back and think about people around me that are emotionally disconnected when things happen. And it's true. Some people are just, they will cut you off with their quickness. Sometimes people are too over emotional. And sometimes people more than likely are trying to find a balance. So that emotional intelligence is so true. Leadership during cultural crisis also requires active listening, not someone talking and you're waiting for a rebuttal, right? You're rebutting before they're finished, but really listening and you can paraphrase what they're saying, right? School counseling 101, problem solving, and shared vision. You know, recently I was speaking, had an interview the other day for a guest on my show, and the interviewer talked about a community organization that faced deep disagreements around priorities. It happened. It's not uncommon, especially in today's time. But instead of choosing sides, the my interviewee talked that discussed that leadership facilitated structured conversations focused on common goals. Win-win. The result, greater understanding, better collaboration, and stronger outcomes, right? Because effective leaders create bridges, not barriers. And developing future leaders become even more important during times of instability. And let me pause for a second. If you don't know, here in this calendar year, during this month, if we're not living in times of instability, wake up. Go put some water on your face. Get some coffee, Starbucks, 7-Eleven, Wawa, hot tea. If you're a tea drinker, put some lemon in there, a little bit of honey, so that your senses can sense what's happening in the world. We are living in important times of instability. Agenda 2030 is ultimately about the future. That means leadership development matters. In my interview, several interviews here recently, leaders that are community leaders, hands down, wasn't familiar with Agenda 2030. That's concerning. But then again, it isn't because they're thinking local, not state, not necessarily global, not necessarily international. That's a problem, but not so much. But leadership development, whether it's global, international, state, or local, matters. We have to begin to hone in and developing leaders more now than ever before. And not leaders of tomorrow, leaderships today. Not youth for tomorrow, youth today, not young adults tomorrow, young adults today. Because future leaders must be equipped with critical thinking, right? They must be equipped with adaptability. They must be equipped with cultural awareness. They must be adapt with systems thinking, and they must be adapt with ethical decision making. And we know 4 out of 5 of those are lacking in today's time for a plethora of reasons. Recently, a young leader participated in a leadership development program focused on community engagement and systems change. Years later, they became a trusted leader capable of navigating complex community issues because they learned ahead before it was time for them to execute and implement. Leadership is developed, right? It is not just by accident. Well, in some sense it is, but in the theoretical and practical implementation is more by behavior learned, right? The leaders we need tomorrow must be prepared today. And all. And finally, let's discuss the types of leaders, the type of leadership Agenda 2030 requires. Agenda 2030 requires leaders who can build partnerships, leaders who can strengthen institutions, leaders who can reduce inequalities, leaders who can promote inclusion, and leaders who can create sustainable solutions. The world does not need more reactive leadership. It needs, the world that is, visionary leadership, courageous leadership, collaborative leadership, accountable leadership. Sustainable development is impossible without effective leadership. And as always, let's bring this into action. Here is your leadership challenge. Evaluate how you respond during periods of conflict and uncertainty. Look internally. Identify one area where trust can be strengthened within your organization or community. And I'll add that as a double-edged sword. Identify an area where strength can be trusted from you as the leader, and then within your organization or community. Mentor one emerging leader this year. Commit to becoming a bridge builder rather than a divider. And that's hard, but definitely doable and needed. Because here's the truth. Cultural crises do not reveal leadership. They test it. Let that marinate and say 5 times. And leaders who emerge strongest are not those who avoid difficult conversations. They are the ones who guide communities through them. If this episode challenged your thinking, follow Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership That Deliver Results AM Talk Show for now on YouTube. Share one leadership quality you believe is important during times of crisis. Very important. Tag a leader who's consistently demonstrating integrity, courage, and accountability during challenging times. Because Agenda 2030 will not be achieved by strong institutions alone. It will be achieved by strong leaders who can navigate uncertainty while building trust, inclusion, and sustainable progress. Thank you for tuning in to a wonderful episode of my AM Talk Show. Rewind. First, hit the subscribe button. Rewind, download, get the audio, share it in your network, embrace the leadership challenges. Let us know how your growth and development as a leader for yourself and a leader in your organization or your community is happening. Tag a leader, but most importantly, check out the new episode tomorrow. Tell a friend, spread the word, and be the difference you need, and most importantly, your community needs during these times of crisis. Until next time, have a fantastic day. Thanks for tuning in, and